Well, thank you again, and it's good to see you. Now we're coming to the kind of the finale of what I was wanting to present, and so this is we're kind of coming to the conclusion.
Conclusion.
The but this is an ongoing conversation. This is not meant to be. This time we spent is not meant to be kind of a set of talks that that we talk that we things we talk about and sort of put on the shelf. The information, of course, you can view it that way, but the process is only beginning. Process will actually started this afternoon at the 3 o'clock meeting, where you broke out in groups according to church, and you started visioning where God wants to take your church. And that will continue to be something you can talk about, and it will continue to become meaningful to you as you talk together about it with your pastor and are praying about it. So this kind of vision type of thing doesn't get birthed in 20 minutes or a half hour or even one weekend. It happens over a number of weeks of thinking, praying, talking about it, praying, talking about it, praying. And the Holy Spirit kind of becomes the one who catalyzes what it looks like. And then you start working and experimenting with new ways of thinking and doing. Now, the old days of strategic planning, you brought out a paper that had all these ideas on it. And of course, it's okay to write your plans down. You need to have a remembrance of what you're talking about and even commitment to certain directions. But it isn't settled when you take the paper to the church board and you vote it. It only begins an experimental process of discovery. So then you start to do some things, and the way that one author puts it, you build the bridge as you walk on it. Now you know your direction, you're praying for clarity and will continue to do so, but the Holy Spirit will help you as you begin to experiment. And the way that we experiment in today's world, I'm talking about the 2020s, is we fail fast. We try new things and we see what works and what sticks, we go for, and then we keep praying and trying and praying and trying. And so you adopt the position that perhaps only one out of six things. This is the normal in the business world. Only one out of six new ideas work, but you fail fast. You keep trying new things. If you take one or two things to the board, we're going to do this year, and then you just sort of let it work its way through, you won't probably go far, because if only one out of six things will succeed, the likelihood is that neither one of those things will succeed. And so it can't be this casual approach. It's got to be prayerful, and it's got to be experimental, and it's got to be failing fast. That's the way you exist today. Businesses that begin today, and I use business only because it's an organization that has a plan. And it happens that church world happens that not-for-profits, even beyond the Adventist church or any other, even a counseling clinic in town that's running a not-for-profit or whatever it may be. Those things, whatever it would be, not-for-profits as well as for-profits have to change a lot every 3 years. You're continually evolving. We don't settle in and kind of feel like, well, we put that one to rest. So adaptation is important. So anyway, thanks for listening to that. I love this statement in Education, page 57. You love it too. I know you remember it probably. The greatest want of the world is the want of men and women. This is meant to be generic in the days when Ellen White wrote that over 120 years ago or so. men who will not be bought or sold, men and women who in their inmost souls are true and honest, who do not fear to call sin by its right name, whose conscience is as true to duty as the needle to the pole, who will stand for the right though the heavens fall. So we're going to talk about two qualities that people who are leaders need today. And every one of these people on the screen, these are only some of the exemplars: Joseph, Daniel, Moses, Elisha, Paul, all of these people had these two qualities. And it is courage, a noble character. This is from Ellen White, chapter 7 in Education. A noble character is the result of self-discipline, the surrender of self for the service of love to God and to man. And so being a person of courage is what is most essential in this era of human history. Now, we live, sociologists tell us, in a time of less courage. We live in a time when people's courage wavers, and people don't have resilience as much as we used to have as a people. I'm talking about America, but it's probably true in probably most every Western country. And business says that younger leaders today lack the ability to be focused and persevere more than they have in the past. So this aspect of being courageous and focused and persevering combined with love, compassion, and humility is where a leader becomes, that's where the leader becomes bigger than life almost. I'm not talking about exalting a person, but a person has what is called presence when they exemplify courage, focus, resolve, combined with love, compassion, and empathy, understanding. So I know this is maybe coming off a little bit technical, but two basic drives are important for being a successful human being. One is that you got to know who you are and what you're about. This happens individually. It happens for churches, corporate bodies. Secondly, you have to have a sense of connection with people. You got to love people and be able to be truly interested in them as people. So these two things, when they match up, a sense of purpose, self-definition, perseverance, resilience, focus, when that combines with heart, which means feeling and loving people, when you get those two things operating equally, they may seem like they're opposites, but in actual reality, they always complement one another. So what do you think about that idea? What do you think about that idea? It's called high backbone and heart. Self-awareness, clarity about what you stand for, and then connecting with others, engaging in authentic ways. What do you think about those two things being that which gives a person a sense of what they call technically leadership presence? Makes sense? Yeah. So can you think of any examples in the Bible when people showed backbone and heart at the same time? Daniel was compassionate and he stood for what was right. Joseph stood for what was right, but he had compassion, listened to the dreams of his fellow inmates in the prison and interpreted them. His who?
And on his brothers,
Yeah, and he had compassion on his brothers. He could have taken revenge on his brothers so easily. Yeah, that's good. Other people in the Bible. Moses had strength and courage. At the first 40 years, what did he have? Yeah. So he was willing to be strong and take charge, but he didn't have empathy, right? Because when he found the guy beating the Hebrew, of course that was a horrible thing to beat another person, but he flew into a rage and killed him. So over time he continued to be a God-fearing man, but he developed a sense of empathy for his people when he led them out of Egypt, right? Boy, these are great qualities. Abraham. Yes, he begged God to. If we find only 10, Lord, will you spare that city? So Abraham showed love, courage. He combined love and courage, even courage in the way he approached God and talked to him. So these two qualities are where courageous leadership really shines. And so it's about balance, though, letting others know what our stances are. And while we define our own positions, we stay connected and interested in what others feel and want, and then show our willingness to be influenced by their positions. So when you are listening, whenever you know where you're going as a church or as a leader in the church or in any facet of life, but to listen to the negative, to the people that have a different opinion and they want to tell you about it. It doesn't mean you give in if you don't think it's the right thing to do, but at least you're willing even to change your mind if they can persuade you. Those qualities are what Jesus had as well, right? So it's a lot easier and less risky to tell what you think, feel, and want about external topics. So if you talk about how you feel about who's running for president, that's pretty easy to say. It may be hard to figure out, but those are not, that's not part of church, and that's not part of your life personally. But when things get a little closer, it's hard to talk about it. And this is where conflict in the church happens. So when there's a problem with somebody and they are not teaching the children well in the division, or they are not, they're not given balanced leadership as an elder, or they are not doing a good job of teaching their adult class, or they're wanting to give in to those who are whiners in the church because they don't want change. When you when you listen to those dear people and you have to live with them, it's harder to speak out about what you're seeing, right? And that's why the whole issue of confrontation is a big one, and it's really a great subject that maybe sometime I could present on if you wanted on a Zoom call with your church. Wouldn't cost, wouldn't be much because I wouldn't come out. And so that's where the real deal comes, is getting down to using backbone where there's a higher sense of being misunderstood. More risk to say what you think and feel and want about decisions or actions that others are taking, And then what you feel about decisions or actions that other people are taking when it's about you personally, when you're speaking to them directly. So why am I talking about this? Because in church world, if you're going to lead change for the sake of mission, you're going to make people upset. People don't, this sounds ugly. People don't like mission in the church a lot of times. They'd rather create a church for themselves. So here's my church, my church. Some of our people had rather had a church where it was older people that we were marketing to. And I was one of the young ones. That's how scary this is. And they'd rather have that kind of church. And even though they knew that we need to make room for a 30-year-old or a 40-year-old in the church, they'd rather give in to the complainers than to have to tell them no. And that's where backbone and heart come in together. What do you think about that? Now, people love Jesus and they want to follow him and serve him, but you can't always be popular if you're going to be a leader. That's kind of the way it works. Of course, you know that. What do you think? Tell me, talk to me.
Well, to be able to,
Yep.
to address stand up and address the opinion, and to be able to do that,
Right.
and have compassion at the same time.
Yeah.
You're not hurting one group or the other.
Yeah.
But you're trying to keep the peace.
Yeah. Listening to people who have complaints and still caring about them. So one of the things is you don't break relationship with people that don't like you. They may get mad, but you go out of your way to shake their hand on Sabbath. You still call them up and see how they're doing. If you feel they're really disgruntled, you still stay connected, even though you're taking a stand that they may not like. Yeah.
And you're taking a risk yourself of rejection from them.
Yeah, you do. That's hard because most of us don't like rejection, and nobody does. But some of us are more sensitive to it than others because we have earlier wounds in life, perhaps, and so it's painful. This is where real leadership happens. This is where Ellen White was. This is part of what she's talking about. The greatest want of the world is one of men and women who will not be bought or sold, who stand for right till the heavens fall. That means stand for the right of mission too, bringing somebody to Jesus. So what if they don't like having somebody come to church who's not like them, that doesn't dress like them or whatever? What if you have to deal with somebody who has hurt the feelings of a new person that didn't know it wasn't allowed and brought fried chicken to potluck? What do you do? That's where the leadership happens. Now, whenever you're leading change in a church, you're going to run into some of that. Here's the beautiful part. If you can stand the time of transition without buckling, or without going cold or hard to anybody, if you can stand that time of transition, it will often settle down. But when a leader is in the midst of this challenge, one side's griping, one side is whatever, wanting to make change or whatever. If you can stand with it, this is an additional point. You're going to encounter what is called sabotage. People that were with you in the board meeting that voted to go with the change in order to allow children to do some program that others didn't think they should do on Sabbath. I'm talking about maybe they want them to sing a song, and these people don't like kids to sing songs on Sabbath. I know a church like that. It's too bad. But there will be somebody who voted for it but will go over to the side of the opposition just because they don't want to be on the side of having to make somebody upset. That's called sabotage. It happens every time in leadership. Now, it's not a big deal. I mean, you'll get over it, but it just takes that kind of resolve. What do you think about this? Is this nuts? Yeah. This is the real deal. And this is where the fun is. So let me tell you, my church, and I hope they don't watch this online. So my church, I described it to you, sweet people, precious people, a few of them, and they were older than me. But they made room for me because I was a young man, and they wanted me to come in. I was 60-something, and they knew they could find a spot for me. And then, we started trying to make changes and we said, well, we want to have a church that even 30-year-olds and 20-year-olds like too, and young families and so on. And so there were some people who didn't like it, and I became the head elder that year. And I started supporting our pastor, a young preacher, which was doing a good job. And we were seeing changes happen, and attendance was picking up, and things were happening, and there was a new feeling in the church. We started singing music that wasn't written by the people in Ellen White's day only. We sang old ones, and we sang some different ones that were 30 years old instead of 130. And so it got rough. And I became the lightning rod because I was head elder, and I was sort of giving voice to that. I didn't have enough sense not to. And so it was tough, and people were thinking about going to the conference and complaining and all this stuff, and there's these coalitions building, and we're going to go back to the way we are. And we finally weathered the storm. And now we got more people coming, and we have a whole new atmosphere in the church. And everybody can come to the church and feel related to. Now, it's far from being far out. It is not a way out church at all. But it took weathering the storm. That's my point. Is it worth it to go through that kind of stuff? Change or die. Boy, you said it. Now, Jennifer listened to my presentations I did at the Auburn City Church last year, January, early in the year. So she has all my notes. She knows everything I'm going to say. But here's the problem, and this is the real reality. If our church had not made a turn toward accepting people my age and younger, then it was only a matter of time before those new people that were starting to show up would quit showing up. And then in 5 years, it was going to be a lot less. And then we're just down to what we call a holy huddle, a few of us gathering to go over the Sabbath school lesson. Pretend church. I mean, you don't have a few people, but we're still kind of going through all of our rituals and, stuff. And that's okay to do formal if you want to. But the church would have drifted, and it would have fallen, I think, to a lower ebb. So there is no growth without change. There is no growth without change. Now, I want to talk about one other thing. Let me see what time it is. We're okay. So then, as you begin to think and pray about some of these things, let me see if I have more here. Full backbone is about the ability to work at all these levels of love as well as strength, and having the internal awareness about what you need to say. And that means the courage, if we've got to be say about what you need. So if you need to see a person become less offensive to new people that are coming, you have to be willing to say it to their face in a loving, kind way. But you got to be willing to say what you need to say. And then you have to authentically be curious about their perspective and listen when you're having to convey something that's maybe difficult. And to do this well is a lifelong journey, but it is very important for leaders because it is tempting to let go of one of these drives, either the drive for courage and strength or the drive for compassion. So these questions provide the agenda for backbone and heart development. Is it that they don't have awareness about what they think, feel, and want? The people that you're trying to help? What causes them to not be able to hear what others think, feel, and want? Or is it that they have difficulty expressing what they think, feel, and want about external issues or internal issues? Do they have difficulty with one-to-one or team-to-leader feedback conversations? So these are questions to ask yourselves periodically. Helping leaders to identify their specific imbalance in backbone and heart is a great service to leaders, because more awareness with integrating all of this, the more they will be able to be effective in everything that they do. So now I want to talk a little bit about another issue, and that is norms. We kind of began to touch on it at the last presentation at 3 o'clock. But anybody have a comment or a question about anything we've spoken about so far? What bothers you about what I've said? Remember, I'm leaving tomorrow, so it doesn't matter, you know?
So when you're going through this,
Yes,
it's
ma'am.
like the there's not unity coming closer, you're kind of splitting.
Yeah.
People of different opinions.
Yeah.
Is that just necessary
Yeah.
to get to the other side of to unity?
Yeah.
Will there ever be unity?
Well, there will never be, so here's what happens. Whenever you take a courageous position, you will get repercussions. And if you listen with empathy and compassion and pray, we do a lot of praying, of course, but you stay with mission, purpose, that's the big test, the litmus test, then God will bless you, but you won't not get negativity. But if you do it with courage, but love and empathy and continually listen, and don't let them cut off connection with you if they quit talking to you on Sabbath, or they quit coming, you don't let them get into that distancing type fashion. I mean, you don't want to be imposing on them, but you don't turn your heart away from them, even if they don't like what you're doing. So that will, over time, the Holy Spirit will subside that negative resistance. But the real test of whether it's worth it Is it helping us to fulfill the mission of God, to seek and save the lost? That's the real test. And so church people don't like the mission to be prioritized sometimes because it's not because they're not good people, but they're myopic. They can't see. They don't have glasses. And they can't see the lost people. All they know is they want to study their Sabbath school lesson at this time, in this place, and this teacher, and so on and so on. And that's all they care about, you know. Or they don't want to change any of the music, or what, you know, whatever the problem is. But it's about mission. Mission is why it's worth it. Otherwise, I'd say it's not worth it. Why cause problems? But the life is in the mission. You know, that's where the energy, that's where the future is. So Galen and I were talking earlier today. You know, Pastor talked last night about the life cycle of a church or any organization. If a church is, or let's say an organization, is like a car being driven up a hill, so it's building up steam, and it's, you know, when it first starts out, it's just beginning, and it gets going stronger and stronger, and it starts to peak the hill. Vision and energy is in the driver's seat of that car, and structure and details are in the back seat. You still need it, but passion, heart, energy, vision is driving it. When the organization starts to decline, structure and details occupy the front seat, and vision and passion occupy the back seat, or maybe even the trunk. So you have to go, in order for an organization to have vitality, it has to have forward thinking about what it is that Jesus is calling us to do. Now, let me just talk. Yes, please.
Yeah, that's a good position for leaders to do. But what
Yeah.
if you're just a church member
Yeah.
and the pastor doesn't have that compassion and love, and so basically we had a family that came to Montana because they liked the pastor preaching.
Yes.
Somehow, our pastor. So they moved from another state.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
build a house.
Okay.
And they lived in a tent for 2 years.
Oh, my.
So, and they came to church and they were new people and they were so excited to be in the church. They were trying to sing and they were in the plaza and they dressed in their best and it was just so exciting. But what happened is the church moved different because most of the church is 80 and older.
Yeah.
And the way they dress, like normal dress in the city, it wasn't even short like this, it was like this.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even bad. It was like normal clothes, like suits and stuff.
Right.
And so the pastor invited them over for dinner,
Yeah.
and his wife told the mother that the girls need to find dresses on the Amish website, and then she will give the address.
Oh.
Yeah, the Amish.
Yeah.
And then because of that, I know they were different from all others.
Yes.
It was just sad and just like, this. So actually, and then they were singing in the church. They
Yeah.
were so singing this part. They didn't dance, but they were like moving so happily. So they got told they all wrong and they do everything wrong. Nobody wanted to be friends with them. So eventually they stopped coming to church.
Yeah.
I talked to them sometimes. I said, well, you still need to come. And then they said, we don't fit. We don't fit, just nobody likes us there.
Right.
Nobody wants to be friends with us. I go, well, I'm your friend.
Yep.
And apparently it's not enough. So they do like to be like active and do things, and they just felt like nobody. So, like as a church member from my side, what do I do to help?
Yeah. So this is very, very difficult when the pastor is the impediment. So you have to go talk to the pastor, and I would even suggest bring someone else. I know Matthew 18 says go yourself, but sometimes
I
pastors.
talked to him.
Okay.
I said, maybe you need to visit them. They seem like they're upset.
Yeah.
Would your families do something there?
Okay. So I would bring somebody else with me to the pastor to talk and make another. The whole church likes it to be like he likes it. Oh, oh. Well, yeah. Well, if the church body doesn't want to, I would, if it wasn't that way, I would take somebody with me. I'd follow Matthew 18, and I would go talk to them. And I would then, if he still says, no, I'm not paying attention to you, I would then ask for a meeting with him and the elders or whatever body. And, well, that's what courage is. You don't do it unethically. You don't talk behind his back. I mean, I know you're not, but what I'm saying is that's ugly. But when you're going to a person with your problem, and then you bring a mature brother or sister with you to talk to them, and then you ask for a meeting with the leaders of the church to discuss it. If that's Matthew 18. If they say no, we don't want to do that. We don't want to be. We don't want to be different. We want to be highly conservative. Then you really have no choice but to either pray and live with the problem, or to find another church that fits if you have that available. Of course, out here in Montana, you don't have churches everywhere like you do in some places. But yeah, it's painful. It is very painful. But talking to people before you talk to others is really important. And I'm not saying you didn't do that, but that's one of the problems we have as church people. We talk to other people about other people's problems instead of going to them, I didn't say that because that was your issue, only because that is a big challenge many times.
Yeah, he preaches that, he says, it's LGBT scene, and everybody says, yes, and then it's wearing jewelry scene, and everybody says, yes, in the church, and I was just like, how can you compare one to another? One is an obvious thing like that. And the jewelry is never in the Bible says it's a sin. It's just like a position of life. I mean, you can't consider that as a sin. And then if he comes and talks to you personally, and if you still haven't, I said, prove me from the Bible. And he says, well, our fathers get together a long time ago. They studied this topic, and that's what they decided. I said, well, then you need to be Catholics then.
That's kind of the way it works.
Show me from the Bible, and he couldn't show me from the Bible. So it's just, I don't know.
It's really pitiful.
I feel like it's like going back like
Yeah.
in time so long, and I don't know. I feel depressed sometimes.
I'm sorry. Bless your heart. That's really, really tough.
And I don't know how can I help this.
I know.
I completely have no clue. I just come there and see, and every time I try to just, even in the Sabbath school, say something because
Yeah.
I'm doing my classes in Andrews, theology,
Yes.
and this class I get something from what I'm
Mm-hmm.
they just look at me like you're regular.
Yeah. That's so sad.
They say hi to me anymore. I don't know, like.
Do I look like that person? I don't know. This is just really weird. I
One-
never saw church.
One option is to have a small group at your home or someplace where you invite people that are seeking a more loving context, not to talk about how bad the pastor is or the people, but to build that spiritual fellowship in life. Katie?
So we've been talking a lot about change over the weekend.
Yeah.
One question I have is how can a congregation encourage change
Yeah.
and still take into consideration that sometimes there might be people in your congregation that feel that change might compromise their personal beliefs or biblically speaking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you maybe have the compassion and the heart on that and still
Yeah.
work through it and speak to that?
Yeah. So you have to talk with, pray is a big thing. Pray, 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 pray all the time. Get people praying, and that's also true for your context, is praying. I can't say enough for that. Then then you need to get people. So you don't lead change by just rolling out a whole new thing for the whole church. You take the influencers of the church and people whose heart the Holy Spirit is working, like you folks, and you begin to pray and study, or like a book like Moving Your Church by Elder Kidder. And you get some of the key people thinking, praying, working on this, and understanding what God is calling us to do. So it's what we call a re-educative approach. Build on solid principles that you're reading and talking about it, and then start to do experiments and pilot projects. So let's try having a service where we let the children sing a couple of songs up front every month or every 2 weeks, or, I mean, whatever the issue is. And so you try things, and then you aren't married to it if it doesn't work. And then, you just gradually work through. But the foundation, like reading this book, Moving Your Church, and the other one, The Anatomy of a Revived Church, the pastor's getting, those books will help to seed new thoughts. So there's one church I worked with, sweet people, but highly conservative and proud of it. By that I mean traditional. By conservative, I mean traditional. Conservative means all kinds of things depending on who you are. So these people started reading some books like this. They started doing a reading club in their church. They read the Moving Your Church. They read some others. Next thing you know, they're trying new things because they've been exposed to new ways of thinking. And then they do experiments. And they tell them that we're going to try this for 6 weeks or 6 months, and if you don't like it, we'll stop. But the reason for doing it is for the mission of Jesus. So you have to sort of re-educate, try new things. But there's not a foolproof. This is not a recipe. Leading change, especially in a church-type organization, there's no recipe for it. You don't get all these things and put it together and whip it up and bake it, and it comes out at a certain way. It's prayerful. It's about learning. It's about trying new things. And it's about engaging with the influencers of the church. So in each of your churches, there are people who influence other people. And you probably are a lot of those people. There may be others who aren't here. There may be somebody back at home who didn't come, who's an influencer, but who's negative perhaps, or maybe highly controlling, or whatever you say. It's not unusual. And you start praying for those people and praying for the church, and then, but if you get the influencers to try new things, it goes a long ways toward getting other people to be willing to try it too. At least that's been my experience. So I want to talk to you about one more thing before I close, and it's 6:59. Can I go 10 more minutes? Okay. So this whole thing of getting rid of dissension and bitterness and whatever, I went to this program last January called Foundations for Tomorrow. One of my friends was after me to go to this. He even paid for the way of a $500 fee. And he even paid for it. He said, Mike, I've already paid for it. I want you to go. Still didn't go. finally, you know, a year later, I decided to go. And it's about dealing with hurts, and it's a weekend thing, and it's in Portland, and it's in Southern California, Loma Linda area. So I went to this, and mainly because my friend had kept talking about it. And they deal with they deal with our issues that have been long seated in our life that hold us back. So through that weekend, they lead you, and it's a confidential type thing. And, you know, there's a group, maybe about 18 participants and maybe 12 leaders. I mean, it's really heavily led. And all the people that run it are volunteers. They don't, some of them are psychologists, professionals. They donate their time. I dealt with some bitterness issues and hurt from my early life as well as my work life, and I was able to choose forgiveness for people that had hurt me. Not only when I was a little boy, growing up boy, but also church work. Church work can be dangerous. And I started sleeping differently, and I began to have a new sense of peace. And it was amazing what God did during that weekend. And I have been to lots of programs and lots of weekends, and I've heard all the spiels, you know, for a long time, for half a century. I've been listening to, oh, you got to go to this camp meeting, you got to go to this thing. You know, it made a huge difference. So I realized the power of forgiveness and letting the root of bitterness get unearthed, unstuck in your life by the Holy Spirit. It was powerful. Now, it wouldn't be human if there wasn't some deep-seated bitterness, hurt, wounding in a church. It wouldn't be unusual. It happens almost every church. I mean, it just is. Humans, it's about humans, you know. Unfortunately, that's what we are. So that dealing with stuff that's the unspoken is powerful for the glory of God, for what God will do for us. Even if it never helps anybody else, it will help you. It will change you. So if you're interested in Foundations for Tomorrow, I could give you that material, that website. But the real point of it is that churches will often have to deal with hurt and the root of bitterness, or whatever you call it, woundedness. And that's what I spoke about earlier this morning, a thorn that's festering and causing pain. And it's not easy to deal with, but it is extremely, I can't express to you how much relief I experienced. Now, it isn't a panacea, because you have to kind of come back. The thing creeps back into your life. And you re-surrender it again to Jesus. So anyway, it was powerful for me. We can talk more if you and your pastor decide that you want me to visit with you as a local church via Zoom sometime. Then the last thing is I wanted to speak about how we need to be clear, and this is a future conversation, potential starter, about what are the unwritten rules for how we do things. They're called norms. Norms are rules on how we run things, and we have the ones we put in the bulletin, and we have the ones that everybody knows they're unspoken, but they're the ones that we really go by. And those are Those unspoken norms can be very powerful when we start to think and talk about the things that the elephant in the room we never talk about. And that takes time and it takes safety. But, you know, we have time to maybe do that again, or you and your preacher can do it, because he's more than capable of anything that you need. So, any questions, comments before we close up tonight? Thank you for the time. Thank you for being able to spend Sabbath in Montana. What a gift to me to come out to Montana and be here on a Sabbath day. What a gift. Any questions, comments before we close?
Should we, this is
Something that could cause casualties in the church, right? I mean, basically.
Leading change can cause casualties in the church.
Something that you on guard for. I guess.
Well, the way you do it is you do it with backbone and heart, patience and listening, and lots of love and attentiveness. And don't let those people be distant. You stay engaged. And but do it through experimentation and work with the re-educative, the reading and the stuff, and then stay in touch with the influencers of the church. It will make a huge difference. Pastor, God bless you.
Well, thank you.